The new board has these dots. They should prevent what happened on this board. They should. They didn't. I tried to line this up as well as I could. Because, see, I sat down last night and I went, all right, how do I see, who do I see making the playoffs? And I looked at it and I went, all right. And then I was like, okay, I'm only picking 3 teams to miss the playoffs that made the playoffs last year. And there's inherent risk. There's an inherent risk. Look at those top 3 from this year. Nashville moved up 16 spots to number 1. The Winnipeg Jets moved up 18 spots to number 2. And the Tampa Bay Lightning moved up 12 spots to number 3. Boston moved up 10 spots to number 4. But the year before that, the Capitals stayed first. The Penguins moved 2 spots. Chicago moved 4 spots. And then you look at 4th, and Columbus jumped by a bunch. That's why there's a dash next to Columbus. I only did the top 22 teams because I knew I didn't have room for 30. The year before, though, 2016, Dallas jumped 17 spots to number 2. Pittsburgh jumped 11 spots to number 4. 2015, the Rangers jumped 11 spots to 1. But it is strange, isn't it? This past year, Vegas was the team that jumped onto the board that hadn't been on the year before. The highest. Let me grab another marker. I bought so many markers when I was on holidays. So many markers. At least 30. Because almost every marker I had was dead. In fact, by the time we started our holiday, I was like, Yvonne, I have 2 markers left and they're both dying. It was red and black. If you look at the videos I did at the start of that holiday, you can see those markers are dying. Okay, the teams that jumped into the top spots here. Number 5, Vegas. Number 4 here is Columbus. No huge jumps in 2016 into the charts. The highest debuter of the top 22 was Philly, and that's not a huge one. But here's Colorado at 3. Here's Anaheim at 3. Montreal at 4. And then over here, you've got Arizona at 4. So who's that team this year? Who's going to make that jump? Or are we in for a year like even 2017 where things are kind of the same? Not really, because of Columbus jumping in there. Edmonton jumping in as well. It's what makes predicting these things tough. Because I kind of have to go out on a limb for it to be anywhere near realistic. And yet, if you had predicted last year that the Islanders were going to nosedive, St. Louis was going to nosedive. Remember, the Islanders in 2017 finished 16th overall, which should have got them in the playoffs, but they missed because they were in the East, and Nashville made it in the West. This past season, Florida gets 16th spot. They missed the playoffs in favor of a team behind them, Colorado, who finished 17th overall, but made the playoffs in the West. So right now we're looking at Florida and saying, well, Florida should be in the playoffs this year, but the Islanders were a team that was pretty easy to pick to go in the playoffs too. Not many did. Admittedly, not many did, because we all knew Tampa was likely going to make the playoffs after missing the playoffs the year before. And yet, here we are. It's one of those things that just, it drives me nuts, because I know that there are going to be teams that make those jumps, and those teams that make that nosedive. Pittsburgh dropped 8 spots this year. Columbus dropped 10 spots this year. So when I talk about Columbus and I say, well, they look like a team that could fall out. The year before, LA dropped 14 spots. LA jumped... They jumped back in. They went from 22nd to 13th. So they are... I tried to get this done as quickly as possible, and it's just not possible. So they went up 9 spots to 13 when we all were writing them off last year as being too slow and too old. And now I'm hearing that again. Like, well, LA's not good enough. They're too slow and they're too old. The year before, the Montreal Canadiens, they dropped 19 spots to 21st. And what did they do the year after? They jumped 14 to get right back into the playoffs. So right now you've got a lot of people who are just writing off Montreal, and nobody predicted Montreal was going to jump back into that position. They went 2nd, 21st, and then back to 7th. And then this past season, they dropped right off the chart. It is a tough call, and nobody picked Vegas to be 5th. There's lots of people saying, well, Vegas will drop. And I could see Toronto passing Vegas. I could see the Capitals passing Vegas. But I can see some erosion with the Anaheim Ducks. Look, they're gradually, very, very gradually moving down the list. Does Anaheim take that dive this year? Was LA? Was that kind of smoke and mirrors, and are they going to fall? Can Anze Kopitar follow that up with another season like that? Can Couturier? Can Giroux follow up the years they had in Philly that got them to the playoffs and do it all over again? It is hard to call. Here's another one. Winnipeg. Winnipeg moved up 9 spots from this season to this season, 2015. 2016, they don't even show up. So 2017, they come back in at 20th place. And last summer, I was like, well, I like Winnipeg, but I don't know if I trust that goaltending. Now I look crazy for saying that. And yet, when you look at the seasons beforehand, there was seemingly no indication of Winnipeg making a jump like this. Nashville, we could see it, because even though Nashville finished 17th, they ended up getting first the year after they got to the Stanley Cup final. So there absolutely is an indication with them. With Tampa, there was the indication because they had the huge run in that second half of the year. And they finished just barely out of the playoffs. But what about next year? So this is the dilemma that I face when I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to do, season previews. And this is part of the reason why we did the poll with the channel. So that at the end of this coming season, when my predictions are so far wrong, I can look back and go, well, we saw this. I mean, look at this. Nashville, up 13 spots here, down 8, down 3, up 16. Very unpredictable. Very, very unpredictable. The Capitals here, down 14 spots. And then the following season, they go back up by 6, drop by 7, go back up by 7, go up by 9, finish with the President's Trophy 2 years in a row, drop 5 spots, win the Stanley Cup, nobody cares. And that's the thing, right? If the Capitals lose in the second round to Pittsburgh this past spring, and Pittsburgh goes on and wins their 3rd straight Stanley Cup, right now we're talking about how the Capitals probably aren't good enough and probably should do some kind of a retool, but who do they trade out? Who do they retool with? Does John Carlson come back? Did they let Carlson go? And this is the thing. 1 6-game series turns the whole thing around, and the Capitals look like geniuses. So this is what's bothering me going into it. Here's Boston down by 16 spots. And going back, now I did this not too long ago, but I only went to 2014. Now looking back further, you can see 16-spot rise for the Rangers, 17-spot rise for St. Louis. Here's a 16-spot rise for Philly. There's that 14 drop for the Capitals. 10-spot drop for the Chicago Blackhawks after they won the Cup. And big jump here by Nashville by 10 spots. Boston drops 12 spots the year before they win the Stanley Cup. Nobody picked Boston to win the Stanley Cup going into 2011. They blew a 3-0 series lead against the Philadelphia Flyers. They're not winning a Stanley Cup. So there's my dilemma. You would think it might be because it's 34 degrees and feels like 38. Nope, that's not it. This is it. My ongoing... I mean, I guess I can pick San Jose to finish 11th overall, since they finished 11th overall 3 years in a row. Which is weird. Very, very, very weird. But there you go. There's the madness for the day. All the madness. And the madness becomes a lot easier because thanks to my kid's grandmother, I have all of the little mini magnets now in boxes, which makes it so much easier for me to get all the magnets on the board and to set everything up like this. and have even more madness than I might have had before. So there you go. If you haven't voted in the poll, I'll link it again in the description for this video. If you have, thank you. And I will get these season previews going pretty quickly here. I'm aiming for this weekend, and I'm thinking that I should do 2 of them a day. And I haven't decided whether to go alphabetical. I haven't decided whether to go reverse alphabetical or just to go by reverse order of how I think teams are going to finish. But I do know this. Wherever I pick teams to finish, it's going to be a lot more conservative than what actually happens. Florida plus 14, LA plus 10 before they drop 14 and then they go up by 9. What are you going to get? Who knows? And at the end of the day, prognosticators like the Hockey News, Sports Illustrated, other magazines, they stick their neck out on the line, and they're usually wrong because you can't factor in things like injuries, momentum, and how new teammates are going to work together. So there you go. My predictions will be incoming. I've worked on them a bit. I will probably sit down, pour over them again and again and again and again and again. And then when I post my previews, we're still going to manage to find out how wrong I am by the end of 2018-19. And who knows? Maybe a team like a Vancouver will come out of nowhere, make the playoffs. Maybe Ottawa, against all odds, magically makes a jump into the playoffs. Maybe the Oilers were closer to being this team than the team that bottomed out this year. And maybe the Oilers find themselves right back in a playoff hunt. And nobody's picking any of them to do it. So there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Who do you think's poised to make a huge jump like the top 4 did this year? And who do you think's poised to make a huge drop? And we'll get into the previews and that kind of thing. And I promise there will be more madness videos. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.